Hi, everyone. This is your host, Sophia Nelson, and welcome back to the Be the One You Need podcast. Happy Women's History Month. I thought that this month what I would do was focus on a very important topic, particularly at the time in which we're living right now, where there is a lot of chaos, confusion, and fear around our social safety nets. I want to focus on caregivers this month. I want to spotlight the caregiver. I'm one myself. Many of you are as well. And what we know from the data is that this is becoming a very serious national crisis because caregiving is very expensive. It's very time consuming. And if, like me, you are a Gen Xer who's aging into your 60s in the next 5 years, and you have aging parents in their 70s or 80s or even 80s, and you might be a mom, a single mom, a dad, a single dad, or you've got young kids, you started later in life, whatever it is, this is something that will touch every single family in the United States and indeed globally. But in America, we have a very different culture around caretaking and caregiving than in other places around the globe. And I thought, given the market's instability, people's Ks are going down and not up after a relatively prosperous last 4 years. And there are tariff wars and things that are global that impact us all. And one of the things that's very concerning, I've heard this from people, as you know, I'm on social media a lot, but I also live in the DC, Maryland, Virginia region. And that region of the country, as you know, is uniquely hit by these layoffs, the Doge cuts, veterans, people who work for the Social Security Administration, the IRS, for Medicare, CMS, Social Security, you name it, it is on the chopping block. And this has a lot of people rightly very, very nervous. So I thought that what we would do, because women are the overwhelming majority of caregivers, whether you're the oldest first daughter like me, or whether you are the only child that is there to care for your parents, or maybe it's a grandparent, an aunt, or an uncle, or a sibling, or a child, or a spouse, this hits us all. And one of the things I've learned from my own personal experience in my family, as well as what I hear from others writ large, is that people are never prepared for this to hit. I want to talk to you about three things. And I want you to write these down because I'm going to give you some very valuable advice and help you so this doesn't hit you the way it hit my family. Now, you all know me. I'm a very practical, pragmatic gal. I'm a lawyer, a recovering one, but I am a lawyer by profession. And so you know that I tried to sit my family down and have this conversation when I was in my 30s. I wanted to talk about wills and trust and estates. I wanted to talk about caregiving and management of my parents as they aged, et cetera, et cetera. But if you come from a family like I do, particularly an African American family where these things are never easily talked about, it's generational. Our parents' generation and their parents before them did not trust banks because they grew up in the Great Depression. Our parents' generation grew up in the Civil Rights Movement. There is fear of institutions and structures, and I imagine this is in other cultures as well. And the expectation on the children or the child or one child, if you have multiple children, is that you guys will figure it out and somebody will take care of you. Let me tell you right now, that is a bad strategy. It is a way to break your family, hurt your family, damage your children, and put responsibilities on them that they simply aren't prepared for. Now, barring you are someone like Seth Rogen, who talks about having his mom get ill with a very serious, I believe it was ALS. Well, Seth Rogen happens to be a rich Hollywood actor. And he talked about the financial impact upon them, and they have millions. Most of us don't have millions, even tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars that we can just give away in caregiving to others. So it's very important that you listen to this conversation and take this advice that I'm giving you and understand that it's coming from a place of knowing, not just the law, but of living it. And I want to start with this. All of you have read about actor Gene Hackman in his 90s with Alzheimer's. He had a wife who was 30 years younger than him. 30 years younger than him. His wife was his caregiver. His wife, apparently, according to the coroner and the reports, was sick herself with a very serious medical condition. They had dogs, they lived remotely. She was the caregiver and the primary responsible adult in their home. Guess what happened? Unfortunately, the caregiver got sick. The caregiver suddenly died, leaving Mr. Hackman, who was dependent on his wife for food, for changing him, for bathing him, and for taking care of him with no caretaker. With advanced Alzheimer's, guess what? He didn't know how to call 911, or he forgot how to do it. Maybe he didn't even realize that his wife had passed. It was so long before someone finally found them, folks, that even the dog died from starvation and dehydration, of course. This is very important. This is a obvious dramatic circumstance where this happened. But I open with this because I want you to understand that every family, every individual will absolutely face this issue in your lifetime. So take this advice to heart because these are very uncertain, difficult times. And it's going to be very critical for families to communicate and talk about long-term care, short-term care. Who's going to do the caregiving? Who's going to bear the cost? This is not something you leave to chance. In my family, I had a mother who was working well into her 60s and early 70s, at 70. She was a registered nurse, labor and delivery, but she had been doing it for 40 years. She was tired. We tried to talk to her about maybe slowing down and retiring. She didn't want to do it because working made her feel valuable. She loves being a nurse. But guess what? She took very suddenly ill with something that started out manageable, which became unmanageable. And as many seniors do when they face their own illness or mortality or losing their independence, they go inward. Now, not only are you dealing with a physical problem with your parent, your spouse, whomever, you're now dealing with emotional and mental health challenges as well. Parents become cantankerous. They want to fight with you. They want to push back. They don't want to cooperate. And what turned into what we thought would be 3 months or 6 months of short-term disability turned into now counting on 6 years. She's now retired, and the disability ran out within the first 2 years after going on long-term. I bring this up to you because most people will not be prepared, as my mother was, by having that extended disability care on top of her Social Security. But guess what? The insurance company under ERISA laws didn't want to pay because they felt that she was collecting Social Security. So even though she had paid for a disability, don't miss this, they shorted her and they offset it with the Social Security, which means that she didn't get what she paid for, and there was an extreme gap in what she was earning and what she needed to sustain herself. That means the kids had to step up. That means the family had to step in. And when this isn't something you plan for or that you talk about, it can be catastrophic on the finances, as well as on your emotional well-being as the caregiver. Now stop there for a moment. And I want to reiterate what I've said to you. We're going to talk today about caregivers and self-care in a time of chaos and conflict and confusion, because we are in the midst of all of that. You need to take this seriously. You don't need to let it weigh you down and make you depressed or sad. You need a plan. I know everyone in my family and my friends always think I'm just being Sophia the lawyer because I always say two things: focus and get a plan. And I'm telling you, the best self-care you can give yourself and your younger people, sit your mom and dad down. Sit your aged aunt who never got married, or uncle, whoever it is, siblings who maybe have a disability, or whatever the case is in your family. You've got to sit down at the table and have a conversation about what is our plan. What are the resources we will have available? Mom and dad, what's your 401k? What's your savings? Do you have long-term care, short-term care? Who's going to have power of attorney to make medical decisions and go with you to the doctor? All of that matters, and it matters a lot. I can tell you from firsthand experience that you get burnt out very quickly trying to, if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you have your own kids, you have your own career, you have a personal life, you have a social life. When you become a caretaker for an aging or sick parent, guess what? All of that goes away because it is all consuming. And then you're dealing with their issues, their attitudes, them feeling angry and isolated or upset that they can't do the things they used to do. And it creates friction. And it can destroy your relationship with your parent, with your spouse, with your siblings, because caretakers need care too. I don't know Mrs. Hackman's story, but one of the things she did wrong, very wrong, was not have a person designated that she texted every day and checked in with. You need to have that person in your life, or every other day, someone that checks on you and makes sure you're well, particularly if you're in a caretaker situation and you are middle-aged or aging yourself. Hell, you don't have to be aging, you can slip and fall. And if someone doesn't know where you are or what your schedule is or who you're taking care of, they may not find you for a week. You have to take this seriously because every single one of us, if we're lucky, will age and get old. Every single one of us at some point will get an ailment or an illness or a serious disease, and we will face our own mortality and we will die. The truth is, we will all die. None of us escapes this alive. So don't avoid, don't ignore. The best way to take care of you is to have those conversations early. Sit your family down. Do you have a will? And if you don't, get one. You can get them online for $99. A lawyer will help you. They'll give you the forms. They'll check your state's laws. You can tell them what you want. Write out what you want for your funeral service. Write out what you want for your repast. Write out whether you want to be cremated or buried. Is there a family plot? Is there somewhere your body has to be moved? And if so, make sure that you buy a particular policy. I have, in addition to whole life and everything else that I have in my portfolio, I have burial insurance. So let's say I was on vacation in Cancun and something happened, God forbid, you've got to get your body back. You've got to pay for expenses. Or if you have a parent that lives with you in Georgia, but they want to be buried in Arlington National Cemetery with your father who served and is buried there, you've got to make sure you can cover those costs. Do not rely on GoFundMe's and the things that I've seen people in my family do. Listen, I paid for more funerals and more people's health problems, people I don't even know. And I let everybody know I'm not doing it anymore. I'm sorry if you think I'm mean. Well, I've got to look out for me and the obligations I have. I am not your retirement plan and I am not your burial plan. And you have to draw those boundaries as well. That's self-care. You have a right to take care of you and your family first and not be made to be guilty and burdened or told you're bad, that you can't take on other relatives, that you can't take on people's expenses. We have friends, neighbors who their mother luckily had the means. She moved up in great health, almost 90 years old, and she had a stroke literally on her 90th birthday. At her party, she had a stroke. It was terrible. Luckily for that family, Grandma had the means and had the money put aside from when her husband passed and being prudent that she could stay in a facility that in Northern Virginia, a decent one, and it is not the top one in the country, it cost over $100,000 a year. I said over $100,000 a year. Do you have an extra $100,000 a year that you can spend on your parents? Even people who make good money can't do it. And then you end up trying to do it yourself at home or bring in care, which is why you need to make sure your parents, when everybody's younger and healthier, Get those long-term care, get those short-term care, get that whole life insurance, have your will, have your health directives, and make sure that you are ready for the unthinkable happening well before you think it will happen. I had an accident on a bike when I was, in my late 30s, I guess it was. Late 30s, very early 40s. Out biking, and a truck almost hit me and killed me. People that saw it later told me what happened. I was thrown from the bike. I had a severe head injury. And as a entrepreneur and businesswoman, I do well. But when you can't work for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months or a year because you have a serious head injury, and then you have other problems that develop, and you are the commodity in your business, you are the consultant, everything stops. I lost my home. My finances cratered. I ended up having to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Something that for me was beyond humiliating and upsetting, but there was nothing I could do. At some point, the money runs out. It didn't matter that I had 6 months' salary saved and all these things. If you get a catastrophic illness or an accident, these are the things that can happen. And my family did not have the resources to save my house or to do the things that I have had to do for people. I'm blessed. I'm lucky. I made it back. I was young enough to recover, and I was able to do so. But it wasn't without hard lessons, a lot of heartbreak, and difficulty. I don't want that for you. I wish somebody had told me ways to prepare, and I thought I was prepared. But one of the things that we do when we're young and younger and healthy is we don't think we're ever going to get sick or hurt, and it can happen. So I hope you hear me on this, that self-care isn't just going to the beach. Self-care isn't just sleeping in. Self-care isn't just taking long walks. Those are good things. That's respite. That's rest. That's recovery. We need those things. Self-care is setting in motion life practices, principles, and structures, a plan that helps us to live the life we want, that helps us to take those trips, that helps us to achieve the things on the bucket list that we want to do before we get too old or before we die. And in these uncertain financial times, many of our portfolios have taken a deep hit just over the last week. That's the market. That's political forces and things outside of our control. And things look to be only getting worse. So again, don't stress about it. Don't freak out about it. Get focused and have a plan for it. So let me wrap with this. What I want to say to the caretakers is a couple things. I have a favorite quote that I love. And if you look behind me on my recording, there's a little fire guy there with his hair on fire. And the quote says, "The current was strong and the tide was great, but that is what she was made for." That is what she was made for. I want you to understand that you were not made to break. I was not made to break. There are many things that are going to happen in our lives that will come to try and break us, without a doubt. But you must not be broken. You must not give in. You must not give up. It is hard enough every day that we wake up to manage ourselves, to look out for ourselves, to take care of ourselves. Having a parent or parents, I have good friends that are married. His parents got sick. 6 months later, her parents got sick. And they were dealing with 4 sick parents that needed around-the-clock care, that did not have the resources, that had not prepared the way that they should have, and they expected their children to fix it, to take care of them. And my 2 friends and their kids and all of us tried to pitch in and help. But at some point, they realized we can't do this, and they had to put their parents in a facility, which caused financial strain. And these people have been through a lot of hell. I know, I've been there. And it is difficult. And the worst part is when you try to talk to your family members and they don't want to listen and they want to do what they do, and they get depressed and they get dark and they get sullen. And I'm going to tell you right now, if it wasn't for my front row, my girls who have been ride or die, my girls who stuck closer than any brother or sister, When you are the only child, or maybe you're one of two children or three or four, and your siblings decide they can opt out, they don't have to be bothered, they can call, they can check in, they might send $100 here or there, or do a little here or there after you have to scream at them, that's not okay. And you don't have to put up with that shit. Let me say it to you straight. Do not put up with that shit. If you have to go get a court order, if you have to do what you have to do, you do it, because your life matters too. And you are not put on this earth just to care for others and die yourself while trying to take care of others. That may sound harsh, I don't care, because it wears on you. It wears on your soul. You have things you want to do. You have to cancel things because you can't leave a sick parent alone. All of these things happen. And if you have a plan and you have the resources, you can bring in people. I was sharing a story that I was in Louisiana last year giving a commencement address, and Louisiana has a very unique program in their state where they have elder care, where the state will keep your parent or parents for up to 7 days, and they will go into a really nice place. They'll make sure they get fed, bathed, and you get a break. That's a state service. Those are the type of innovative things we need to be doing right now, not cutting Social Security, not cutting Medicaid, not cutting Medicare. If you want to hear my thoughts on that, you got to go over to the political podcast, though, and Building Bridges. And this is the wellness, well-being, self-care, aspirational, inspirational podcast. And I wanted to talk with you about this today because I know you guys are afraid. I see the people. I've read the stories. I've lived it. It can bankrupt you trying to care for family members when they haven't planned. And I want to say this to parents listening to me right now, when you're young or you're approaching your 40s, 50s, wherever you are. Your kids are not obligated to care for you to the point that it bankrupts them, to the point that it takes away their retirement funds or their ability to send their kids to college. That is wrong. It's wrong thinking. It's wrong-headed. You're not entitled to anything. You brought your kids into this world, and they're a blessing to you. If they want to bless you, if they want to help you, if they want to look out for you, that makes you so lucky. Because so many people that walk this earth right now have no one and nobody that gives two damns about them. So parents, people who are being cared for, spouses, even children, if you have people that love you, are taking care of you, are feeding you, or trying to help you get through the most difficult experience of your life, don't be nasty to them. Don't pick fights with them. Don't be evil. Don't rant at them. Don't lie on them to other people and say they're not taking care of you when they are, because you are feeling guilty or bad about what you didn't do. That's wrong. And if you want to destroy your relationship with your spouse or with your kids or with your loved ones or with your caretakers, have a nasty attitude, be ungrateful and feel entitled, and you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt. This needs to be said, because caretakers are a blessing. It is a thankless job. Shout out to the people that work in the nursing homes, that wipe people's bottoms, that feed them, that clean them, that bathe them, that exercise them, that talk to them, that just hold their hand when their families don't show up and don't give a damn. And that happens a lot in this country. And I fear everywhere. So what's the point, Sophia? What are you saying? What I'm saying is this. If you want to practice really good self-care, yes, you need to have respite. You need to eat well. You need to exercise. You need to do all those things. Those are the easy things. But real self-care comes from security. It comes from feeling and knowing that you have done the work, that you have been consistent, that you are committed, and that you are a person who is of good character and of good conscience. And you will do all you can to help mom and dad when they get old, or help a sibling in need, or help whoever you can. But that there are boundaries that you are entitled to as a human being. You are entitled to rest. If you're sick, you shouldn't have to be taking care of someone sick. And that's what happened to Mrs. Hackman. She was very sick, and she didn't stop to think about herself because she was so focused on her love and devotion to her husband. And then they all ended up dead. And like I said, including the dog, for God's sake. So listen, get a will, get long-term care, get short-term care, health directives, buy extra disability insurance on your job or take it out if you are, like me, a sole proprietor entrepreneur. Make sure you have good healthcare coverage. Invest in yourself so that you can show up for the other people in your life. But set healthy boundaries. Have these conversations. Come up with a family bill of rights that everybody signs and says, hey, if mom gets ill and there's 3 of us, we'll each take turns. Or the person who keeps her will get 3 weeks off a year. And once a month, they get to go out on date night with their spouse or their significant other. Whatever it is, pitch in and help, because caretaking takes a toll. I think of my sorority sister, Yvette Nicole Brown, wonderful actress, much more wonderful human being, newly married, and her husband to be was at the altar with her. And he knew how much her dad meant to her. And her dad has been in a facility when he had to go in for memory care. And Yvette's an only child. Her mom has passed, and Yvette is crazy about her dad. She would tell me, Sophia, it's a privilege to care for daddy. And it was hard on her when she finally realized she couldn't do it anymore. Her husband to be, there's videos, by the way, I'm not giving you any secrets, you can Google this. He said, do you trust me? And she said, yes. He walks away from her at the altar, and everybody's like, wait a minute, the groom just walked away. The groom went out and got her dad in a wheelchair and wheeled him in at the altar. Not a dry eye in the place. What's my point? My point is, find, as Mr. Rogers said, the helpers. Seek out the helpers in life. Be a helper, but make sure you take care of you, because there's only one you. So caregiving is not just for the person who you're making sure eats and gets bathed and gets to their appointments and gets their medication. Caregiving is also what you give to you. And it's how you set boundaries. Don't let anybody guilt you. Don't let anybody lie to you or lie on you about what you owe them. You don't owe anybody anything. You do good things because you want to do good things, because it's the right. But you also set boundaries. If you bankrupt yourself, how can you help anybody else? If you die, Mrs. Hackman, the people you're caretaking will also die because they're dependent on you. So you've got to have a system of checks and balances. Boy, is that an appropriate thing to say right now, right? I think you hear me. So on this Women's History Month, again, I want you to remember that quote that I shared with you, the little firebug behind me. My friend, Dr. Suzanne, gave that to me. And shout out to Sabrina Jackson and Suzanne Nixon for being therapists and best friends and 2 professionals who have given my family a lot of free time, a lot of love, a lot of care. I would have lost my mind but for having in my row mental health care professionals, because this shit is hard. And when people don't want to cooperate, they want to be nasty to you and push back and just say all kind of ugly to you, you get resentful. And that resentment stews and it stirs and it comes out. And that's not where you want to be. That's not what you want to have happen. So if you have a plan and everybody agrees to what they will do when the hour happens, when the sickness comes, when the cancer comes, when the Alzheimer's comes, when whatever it is comes, you're ready as a family. And lastly, let me say this to caregivers. One, I want to give you much love and tell you that you are appreciated, that what you're doing makes you angels from heaven. Because as Jesus said, do for the least of these, you've done it for me. So anybody you help with love in your heart and you're caring for, even when they are cantankerous and nasty and not somebody you like very much, particularly then, you know that you are on the side of the angels. So thank you for what you do. And thank you to all of those people that take care of our vets and the people that look out for our seniors and are there when we can't be. Because these people aren't even your family and you love them and care for them. I know there are a lot of gentlemen that listen to this as well, but I really wanted to talk about caregiving and having a plan that sets you up for success. And it's simply having your documents in order, knowing what you're going to do, knowing who's going to do what, What's the pool of resources and how do we do it together? If you're an only child, this is a lot tougher, but you can look for resources in your church, in your community, in your friendship circles, and in your parents' friendship circles. You'd be amazed how many people are willing to help and step up and support you when they see you trying to do the right thing. All right, you guys, listen, happy Women's History Month. We'll have another podcast next month here on the Be the One You Need and Woman Code TV network. I'm excited about everything we're doing. We will officially launch the Redefining Freedom Center next month. The website's being built. We're doing great things. I am so looking forward to this year, despite all the craziness around me. The key is to not let it get in you. There's a lot of crazy going around us. Don't let it get in. Don't let it taint your soul. Don't let it break you. Don't be overwhelmed and overcome. Focus and have a plan. You will be amazed at how much stress that takes out of your life. God bless you and keep you. I love you guys. Until we meet again. Bye-bye now.